Hello everybody and welcome back to the second part of our lesson on how to draw a table in one-point perspective. Now in case this is your first time here, my name is John Nyaga and I am an artist and your art teacher. In the first part of the lesson, we learned all about the terms that are used in perspective drawing, and we also learned to draw the boxes that are right in front of you. In this second part, we will turn these boxes into tables. But before we get into turning the boxes into tables, if you missed the first part of the lesson, I highly recommend that you watch it because it will bring you up to speed with what we'll be doing in today's lesson. Right, now it's time to turn our boxes into tables. And on your screen, you can see that there are some boxes that I've prepared. And obviously, they are a little different from their slight differences between these boxes and the ones we did in the lesson itself. One difference is that I have placed my vanishing point way to the right of the page as opposed to the middle, and that's simply because I don't intend to have any boxes to the right of the vanishing point. The second thing that I've changed is that I have got rid of the green lines which were indicating the perspective lines. Instead, I have used black ones which are grayed out or they are faint. And then the third difference is that the boxes appear much deeper than the ones we drew in the lesson. And that is because most tables are rectangular in shape as opposed to square. And I did not include the making of these boxes in the lesson because you already know how to draw boxes in perspective. So I didn't want to take too much time with that. And if you choose, you can create fresh tables as opposed to using the ones that we did in the lesson. You can create tables, or you can create boxes just like this before we continue with the lesson. All right, let's now get into turning the boxes into tables. And we are going to begin with the box at the bottom. So we zoom in like that, we zoom into the box. And then you start by drawing the part of the object which is closest to you. And the part of this box which is closest to us is this face which is nearest to us here. And the first part of the table we are going to draw is the top, the table top. And we are going to draw more guidelines. Now, as you can see, the boxes are complete with the perspective lines and also the horizon line. Now, it is very important to leave all the guidelines in place until you finish. Leave the guidelines in place. The only thing you need to do is remember to make them light or faint. Don't make dark lines, which will make it difficult to erase when you are finished with drawing the table or any object that you are drawing. All right. So all the guidelines are in place, and we are going to draw more guidelines to help us now to draw the tables within the boxes. And we are going to start with the box at the bottom. Start by zooming in my case, because I'm using Photoshop. And the first part of the table that we are going to draw is the top, the table top. And like we said, we start by drawing the part which is nearest to us. So it is this edge, the edge of the table which is facing us or which is closest to us. And what we do is we pick a point where we want the thickness of the top to end, and then we draw a horizontal line across just like that. All right, so that is the first thing we do. We determine the edge or the thickness of the edge of the table top. And then from now, this point, we have a perspective line going all the way to the vanishing point. At this point, I'm sure you've picked up the fact that everything you draw ends up at the vanishing point. So we now have the side edge and the front edge of the table. The next thing we want to do is we draw the legs of the table. We draw the legs of the table. So to draw the leg, again, we just determine the width of the leg, and then we draw a line. So that is the thickness of the leg. And then as much as possible, we get the same thickness. At this point, we are not too worried about being precise with the thicknesses. We are concentrating on how to draw the table. Later on, we can go into using even centimeters to make sure that everything is the same size. But for now, we will skip that. We'll just use our eyes to determine the thickness of the leg. There we are. And then, as we know, a table, the leg of a table has four sides just like a box. So we draw another leg on this other side, not another leg, but another side of the leg on this other side. And then we draw a vertical line, all right? And then we draw the leg which is at the other end, the thickness. Obviously, since it is further away, we make sure that it is not as thick as the leg which is near us. So we draw a leg, a line there to indicate the thickness of that leg. You will notice that this leg is much narrower than the leg which is near us. All right? Now, we have parts of the legs of the table. And what we are going to do now is to draw the sides of the table. There's a part which is usually beneath the top, which holds the legs together and also helps to hold the rest of the table together. So we just pick a point where we want the thickness to end, and then we draw a line going right across. Now remember these are guidelines, so we'll make the line go through the leg so that it gives us now the perspective of the other side of the table. So we draw a perspective line going from that point to the vanishing point, and it gives us now the other side of the table in perspective. Everything which is going inwards has to end at the vanishing point. Obviously, lines are crossing each other. That's where we are making light lines, remember, so that once we are done, we will erase the parts which we do not want to be part of the table. What we are going to do now, we are going to draw the inner side of the leg on the left, and even that side we will still draw a line starting from the corner there all the way to the vanishing point, and it gives us the angle of the leg that we are going to draw. And then we will draw now a horizontal line coming from the edge of the leg that we have already drawn here, going all the way to the other leg, and then it gives us the thickness. It gives us the thickness of this leg because it has to be the same as the thickness of the other leg. At this point is where now we draw a vertical line to indicate the thickness of the leg. And since we cannot see through this solid side of this table, then we don't draw the line all the way up because it is blocked by the side of the table. Now, to get the thickness of the far leg of the table on the right, we will draw a line from this corner of this leg, which we've already drawn, to the vanishing point. And we do that, and that gives us now the thickness of this other leg. And from there, we just draw a vertical line, and we have now completed the drawing of the table. Okay, we have now finished drawing our table in 1-point perspective. At this point, what we are now supposed to do is darken the lines of the table to distinguish them from the guidelines and the perspective lines. Let us start with the lines at the top of the table. So we darken the top itself. We darken the shape right at the top. Okay? So we darken the lines for the top. And then we now show the thickness of the top. And then we darken that line. And we can actually darken the vertical line all the way from the top. We can now darken the vertical lines. It's easier that way when you work on the lines which are going in the same direction instead of turning your paper or your book every time you want to draw a new line. So we darken all the vertical lines. We darken all the vertical lines like that. We darken the vertical line there. There, the vertical line. Here it is important to remember which line is forming the edge of the table, and in this case it is the line in the middle there. So we draw the vertical line, and then let's draw the horizontal lines of the table, starting with that one there, and then the line at the bottom of the leg, the other line at the bottom there, and the other line there, and then the perspective lines like that, the lines which are going into the distance, the edge of the table. And we have successfully darkened all the lines which are forming at the edge of the table. Now after that, we now get an eraser. You just get an eraser and get rid of the perspective or the lines which are going through the table like that. Or we get rid of now all the perspective lines and the guidelines. We get rid of those lines. And as you can see, the table is being revealed here. We are slowly revealing the table. Of course, in my case, I put the lines on a different layer. Those who know about layers in Photoshop will not wonder how come I am erasing. I appear to be erasing through. Yes, that is the layer. But in your case, you just need to erase carefully, avoiding all the lines. And there you are. There we are. We have actually been able to draw a table in 1-point perspective. Right. Now, once you get rid of all the guidelines and the perspective lines, then you should have a clean table in perspective, in 1-point perspective, just like what you have on the screen. To make this table look complete, we are going to paint it. In your case, you can use coloring pencils, you can use watercolors, whatever you have available. In my case, I'm using Photoshop, so all I need to do is pick my paint bucket, select a color, and drop the colors onto the spaces within the table. Alright, so for the top, I am going to use color blue. I like blue. So we drop a light blue color there, then we pick a darker a darker version of the same for the sides of the table, and then I will pick an even darker version of the color for the final side. So you realize that we have shaded we have used different shades of the same color to enhance the three-dimensional feel or look of the table. And there you are, you have drawn a table in 1-point perspective. And now that brings us to the end of part 2 of our lesson on how to draw a table in 1-point perspective. As much as we were only drawing a table, you can apply the same skills when you're drawing anything. And that brings us to the end of our lesson today. And please remember to subscribe, remember to comment, and also give suggestions. I will leave my contacts in the video description. See you in the next lesson.